Hey folks, Jason Duke's Dirt Race Life. In this video, you're going to see race footage and recap of a race we ran in Hohenwald, Tennessee in the southeastern U.S. The name of the racetrack was Tennessee National Raceway. They had a modified street stock special race, and we found that our Camaro would meet the rules provided I added a significant amount of weight to it. So we had to weigh 3,300 pounds. My car, I have run from 3,000 pounds to 3,200 pounds. I've never ran it at 3,300. And from where we were at, I had to add 300 pounds of weight to the car in order to meet the requirements. This caused me some significant challenges with getting the setup to work on the car. So we'll go through this footage and then we'll turn around and have a recap. I think I've learned something about making a big change like that, and then also some changes we made at the track and why that did help for the feature. Stick around. No. It's
what do you think growing on my car?
it's like a, I don't know, it's some kind of water and wax mix.
Keeps the mud from building up.
It makes the mud just dry fall off.
To repel it, like a
It'll
nano.
still get on there, but when it's dry, it'll just fall right off.
Like nanoparticles.
Yeah. It's some type of a wax solution, so it is probably. But it does work.
You know, Jay buys those used cars and stuff, those red cars, and paints somebody's house and stuff.
Just for your information, the car was washed. He's not washing the car. This keeps the dirt off of it. The soapy solution lets it just fall off. Just to clarify that. He's gonna kill him when he gets to anything. Just remember, whatever y'all's conversation is, I'll be editing through it later. Keep going, you know.
Are you gonna put music to it?
Huh?
Do you put music to yours?
I mean, I can, but I don't know. I mean, I'll fool with it on some. It's kind of like a back, you know, but I'm still learning. The last one I did, it was too loud. You know, the whole B-roll thing and intro stuff and all that. I'm still learning.
What, on the B-roll shot?
Yeah, making them really good.
Next three coming out on the track, gonna be the number 28, Jason Elmore. Hunter Hill and the J2. And Hot Rod gonna be Jason Douglas.
So what did you think of that disaster? Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. Got out there on the track. When I qualified, I knew the car was tight, and I had flipped to three-wheel brakes in qualifying, but the track was really hooked up, and I didn't think it was that tight. And so I took and I said, okay, I'm okay. I'm going to leave the car alone. But when I got done with qualifying, and I don't have footage of it, but I had to go back across the scales. The car still came up light. Their track scales were fairly close to my scales at the shop, but I was still about 20 pounds under. So I put even another 25 pounds onto the rear of the car. And I was thinking that the track, it would come to me some and the car would turn better in the heat race. It did not. If I had not had the three-wheel brakes on, that car would not have turned at all. And basically what was going on there, go back and look at the footage again if you need to, but what I was doing was I was forcing the car to snap loose. And this is a trap that new drivers can really get into, and especially if you're watching your driver race, you may see the car like go really tail out, from entry into the middle, and you think, wow, this car's really loose. And in reality, it's not. It's that the driver is snapping the car out. And sometimes, even if as a driver, you may not realize it. You may say, well, the car's just really, really loose. But in reality, you're stabbing the brakes and forcing the car to rotate really hard. And so that's what was going on here. The car was really tight, but it had a lot of left rear in it, a lot of rear in it. So in the entry, when I'm decelerating with all rear brakes, plus having the right front turned off, left front hooking down hard, I was literally, stabbing into the brakes, locking my left front tire up, and then the car was immediately, rotating. The whole rear end, I was breaking it loose. The car was rotating around. The problem is that at that point, now I'm in a skate. I'm just basically in an uncontrolled drift on the track. Car's slow, car's just like hooked up to the track, way too tight, motor's just bogging, just a bad scenario all around. Definitely not a scenario that you can work in traffic with. If you look at the footage, you'll see that as I was middle off, look at how the nose of my car is pointed out toward the outer wall much more than the other cars. So as a spectator or as a crewman watching your driver, pay attention to where the car is angled, coming out of the corner too. So a real indication, not just, do you see the wheels cranked hard over to the left and the car's pushing forward, but also just what direction is the nose pointing, period. And so that's what was going on there. And what happened is I finally got to a point that I was throwing the car so hard to try to hit that angle and then just skate through the turn and get that nose down more so that I wouldn't be driving off to the wall, because what was happening is I was having to get off the throttle. And so I was trying to get where I could stay in the throttle hard, and pick up some lap time. And I ended up, having my rear tires in what was already slicking off, car just rotated around. Follow up about spinning a car out when you start adding a lot of weight to the outside coming up at the end of this. I want to talk about that too. So with that, what I'm going to do is we're going to go to, I've got where that I came back from that race and we were brainstorming. Me and my buddy David Cove, we race a lot together. He's one of my sponsors. And so we were kind of arguing back and forth and brainstorming about how bad it was and then like what to do. So let's go through that, and then we're going to move to the feature, and then we'll talk about it some more. They didn't put the lineup out, and then they put the lineup out at the last second. They called us to stage it. I didn't have time to set my air pressure. I didn't have time to do anything. I just grabbed my helmet and jumped in the car. The car wasn't right. The car wasn't right. I hate that too. It was a disaster. I started to pull a caution, and I seen I could save it, and I'm like, I'm dead last anyway. So, I mean, I didn't pull the caution. I just ran through the infield and back out there. It's throttle pushing mid off is what it's doing. Now, everything else is just a symptom of that, but it's throttle pushing mid off. Huh? Yeah, I'm.
It's not turning to the left, it's going straight.
Yeah, I know.
You probably had a front row seat.
Yeah, but I had to bolt 300 pounds on the car. I had locked this car down to the track. Like, it's like I bolted three. I've never done that. I have never added 300 pounds to a car and turn around and take it to a track and, like, you know, what does that do? It's like, you know, that one's got me. I gotta think. What was it doing? What was it really doing? What was it really doing? I was going through. Brake cord. It's gonna make me push more.
Right, so that's why you gotta put some stagger in it to make it come through the corner.
I got all the stagger I'm gonna put in it. I got over 3.5 inches of stagger in it right now, David. It is stuck to the track. I've got to get this thing freed up. Freed up.
Put some air pressure in it.
Oh, I don't even know what they're at. I didn't have time. I don't know. Where I was qualified. Yeah, it's stuck. It was a disaster. It was a train wreck. It was straight up train wreck.
So the setup of the first one didn't go so well. You want to talk about how what you did second?
The heat race was a disaster. Adding 300 pounds to this car, I was not ready for how drastically that was going to change the setup. So we've made some big changes. We dropped an entire hole on the left rear shackle. We took about 50 pounds of bite out of the left rear. Changed up some tires. Let the stagger alone. I need all the stagger I had in the car. I need that. So we'll see what it does. It won't drive the same as it did. It'll either be worse or better, one of the two. But I'm okay with that because I don't want to stay where it was because it was terrible. So, anyway, we'll see. That's what,
Yeah, I think you need about, I just took pictures above them so you know. Got it? All right.
Well, it was definitely improvement over the heat, no doubt about that. The big change that we made, we went back and we raised a shackle hole on our left rear. We went up 1 inch with our left rear spring on the shackle itself. Took a lot left rear bite out of the car is what that did. We also changed our tires around to take some left rear bite out of the car as well. So the big thing that I had to recognize is that in the shop, that car on the scales before we went and raced, I had about 125 pounds of left rear bite in that car, but my rear percentage had went up a whole point. I'd been like from 53 up to 54 on the rear percentage for the car. And what I wasn't recognizing was that my left rear bite number needed to come down. That with that increased rear percentage, I was going to get into a situation where the car was going to really push when I picked the throttle up more than I was going to be able to handle. And so that was the big takeaway from this. When I made a big increase in my weight loading and increased an entire percentage point on the rear, that just changed how much left rear bite. That left rear bite is the additional amount of weight that the left rear weighs over what the right rear weighs. So like 950 pounds on left rear versus it was I think it was 825 on the right rear. And so that's 125 pounds extra on the left rear of the car. So I need to recognize that my left rear number needed to have come down. Big improvement from doing that. I still nearly spun the car out one time and went completely to the rear and had a lot of cars that had to be passed to place because of that. That was my fault, and that has to do with polar moment and the center of the car and rotation around that. And so that can really be a challenge, and I want to cover that right quick. So when I added this weight on, my car has got an enclosed interior, not just a cockpit, but the passenger side too, so that it fits a lot of rules, full firewall and fully enclosed, rear firewall and all. And it's very difficult to put weight on. I have to take my car apart if I'm going to put weight on inside of that area. And so for that reason, I've bolted all this weight on outside of it, and I just kind of drew it out here. And what I did on the front, like where the firewall is I had about 85 pounds of weight, inside of my wheels, but on the firewall, and then the rest of it, which was a little over 200, I had at the rear. And so my rear end, I was sitting about 6 inches rear of the rear end. So I've got a fuel cell, and then the rear end is in front of the fuel cell. And so there's an area in there where I've got a lot of clamping and options and stuff that's basically over the rear end. But right in here, about 100 pounds of it right in the middle, with 50 over the left and another 50 over here over the right, kind of spread out right there at the rear end. The rule is don't put weight outside of your wheels of your car, because it's like a pendulum effect. It's like a yo-yo on a string. When you swing it, the longer the string is, the harder it pulls. And so what this is your center of gravity. The further out your weight is from the center, when your car rotates, it makes the car want to keep rotating. It makes it harder for you to get the car to start to turn and harder for you to stop it from turning the further out the weight is from your center of gravity. And so I had increased that number by enough that it was matter. It changed how the car drove. So I've built this car, and I've gotten real comfortable with the car, keep the car under me. Kind of knew where the limits were for when the car would spin and get beyond what I could recover, and that ratio of like how far I could push it changed on me because I had changed the polar moment. And so that's the reason I let the car ended up getting out from under me, and I had to cut across some tires there in that race. That cost me a lot of positions that I turned around, then I had to make up. But that's what it's related to. That's the reason when you're building a car, try to build the car to match the scale numbers you're after as you're building it. You don't want to end up like after the fact trying to put ballast way out from where your center of your car is to hit scale numbers. That's the reason for it. It makes cars harder to drive, definitely harder to work in traffic with. So watching the footage, a couple of interesting points there. When I'm in the back, like overtaking a car that you have a clear advantage in lap time on, That's a lot easier even on a tight track, because you can get a run on them in a single straightaway and kind of clear the car. And they see you there, you're in the turn, and you know you're up on their door or something, and so you've kind of got a position. They're going to kind of give you room. It gets a lot more difficult as you're passing cars when you get to a car that you can't just clear in a straightaway, that you have to edge up on, you know, and so you're trying to. It gets really tough because there may be a single groove that you're in that's the fastest groove, that's the line they're in, and you need to edge up on them, but you can't be beside them and be in that fastest line. And you know that I was running into that, where that I was trying to duck down under a car right at the end, toward the end of the race, the last one that I passed, but I was trying to run the same lap speed as what I had been when I was in that groove behind him. And so, and you know, that's a difference where that a seasoned veteran is, you know, that instinct of kicking in, of knowing, like when you get in that other line, you've got to change how you're driving altogether. And so what was happening with me is that I was carrying all that speed, and then I was trying to duck down, catch that brown in the bottom, didn't really have a short enough gear to be able to pull it off. And I was just stalling, you know, washing all that speed off, and then, you know, trying to dig off that inside, and of course wasn't gaining an inch on the car. And then kind of, you know, some of, you know, my learning, it's like, wait a minute, I'm entering this corner too fast. And so first, really got to keep your car under you. If your car's not under you, all you're doing is wrecking instead of racing. The second rule is recognize when you need to slow down to speed up. And so, you know, I was way overshooting to run that low run. Then I slowed down. I braked earlier, sooner coming into the turn, made the car stick, got the car to roll through the inside of the turn instead of just scrubbing all the speed off, and was able to make that last pass. So something there interesting might be able to learn from. And I kicked myself in the head because, like, yeah, and I wasted 3 laps before I remembered I should change how I'm driving to run that inside line. But hopefully I'll get better if I keep racing. Anyway, I hope y'all took something from this and that it was helpful. Leave me a comment, send me a like if you like what you're seeing here, and subscribe. Thank y'all.